Did you know that there's literally a prisoner who successfully mailed himself out of jail like a package? Or that there's a drug lord who had a nightclub, spa, and waterfall built inside his prison cell? What about the fact that one inmate escaped 3 times using hijacked helicopters? Today, we're counting down the 15 most absolutely unbelievable prison stories that actually happened. Number 15. The man who literally mailed himself out of prison. Starting off our list with something that sounds like a joke but is absolutely true. Richard Lee McNair literally mailed himself out of prison in 2006. Yes, you heard that right. This guy working in the prison mailroom climbed into a coffin made of shrink wrap and mailbags. But wait, it gets better. Guards at the Louisiana State Penitentiary literally waved the delivery truck through the gates without checking. McNair slipped out 100 miles away and lived free for years before being caught in Canada.
What is? We got an escapee.
Oh. Where from?
A prison.
There's a prison here?
Yeah.
The man turned himself into human cargo, and nobody thought to check the suspicious person-shaped package. Prison officials basically said, "Our inmate just became priority mail." When your escape plan involves becoming a package, you know you've reached peak creativity territory. Number 14. The prison with a built-in escape tunnel. Moving on to something that redefined what Mexico considered maximum security. El Chapo Guzman's cartel dug a mile-long tunnel straight into his prison shower in 2015. This wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was equipped with lights, ventilation, and even a motorbike on rails. But this wasn't just engineering genius. Chapo vanished from security cameras mid-shower and reappeared in freedom. The tunnel was so sophisticated it had better infrastructure than most subway systems. Picture the prison guards. Where did our most wanted drug lord go? He took the Underground Express, apparently. Mexican officials basically said, "Our prisoner now has better transportation than our public transit system." The man looked at a concrete prison and thought, "This needs a private subway line." Number 13. The helicopter Houdini. Here's where we get into inmates who don't hide their escape preferences. Pascal Payet escaped French prisons 3 times using hijacked helicopters between 2001 and 2007.
But now we can see exactly what happened, and really it just looks straight out of a movie. In the video, you can see the helicopter, which was hijacked earlier by 2 armed men.
Yes, you read that correctly. This man had a frequent flyer program with stolen aircraft. Payet escaped twice for himself and wants to free other inmates because apparently regular helicopters weren't challenging enough. His accomplices would literally hijack helicopters and land them in prison courtyards like they were ordering takeout. Citizens were literally asking, "Do you get paid to be a prison helicopter pilot?" And if you thought El Chapo's tunnel was elaborate, wait until you hear about a botched execution so horrific it made witnesses faint. This is where prison stories get truly unbelievable. Number 12. The headless hanging. Welcome to Wild West justice gone wrong. Tom Blackjack Ketchum's execution in 1901 became one of the most infamous botched hangings in American history. The executioners miscalculated the rope length, and when the trapdoor opened, his head tore clean off. Meanwhile, witnesses fainted in horror at what was supposed to be a standard execution. It's like planning a simple procedure, except the person organizing has zero understanding of physics and unlimited access to rope. The irony here is incredible. Officials trying to demonstrate justice while creating a spectacle that traumatized everyone present. If you think that's disturbing, just wait until we get to the prison that was actually a luxury resort. Number 11. The prison that was actually a palace. Here's where brutal drug lords meet 5-star hospitality. Pablo Escobar's prison called La Catedral in Colombia wasn't just comfortable. It had a nightclub, soccer field, spa, and waterfall. But it gets weirder. Escobar ran his entire drug empire from inside, hosting friends for parties. This wasn't just lenient incarceration. When officials tried to transfer him to a real prison, Pablo simply walked out. He basically built himself a drug lord vacation resort and called it jail time. Imagine Colombian authorities. Our most dangerous criminal is imprisoned. Where? In his personal nightclub. So we've gone from inmates mailing themselves out to inmates building luxury resorts. But at least Pablo stayed put initially. Our next story features the most romantic helicopter escape in history. Number 10. The wife who learned to fly a helicopter. Moving on to something that redefined what France considered reasonable marriage support. Michel Vaujour's wife, Nadège Viraud, secretly learned to fly helicopters, then rented one and landed it on La Santé prison's rooftop in 1986. But wait, it gets more romantic. Michel, using nothing but a toy pistol, climbed aboard and they flew away into the sunset. They lived on the run for months before being caught. This gives a whole new meaning to "till death do us part." When your spouse learns aviation to break you out of maximum security, you've got relationship goals that most people can't match. Number 9, the Attica prison uprising. Here's where prison tensions meet explosive violence. Over 1,200 inmates took complete control of Attica Correctional Facility in New York for 4 days in 1971, holding 42 staff hostage. But the retaking was brutal. State police killed 29 inmates and 10 hostages, initially blaming inmate violence before the truth emerged. This wasn't just a prison riot, this was a full-scale revolt.
To change forever the ruthless brutalization and disregard for the lives of the prisoners here and throughout the United States.
That exposed the brutality of the American prison system. The McKay Commission report revealed that authorities had lied about the deaths, claiming inmates had killed hostages when it was actually police gunfire. Think about that for a second. Officials were so determined to control the narrative that they blamed victims for deaths caused by their own forces. Number 8. The man declared innocent after execution. Welcome to Texas justice, where evidence comes second to execution schedules. Cameron Todd Willingham was executed in 2004 for allegedly killing his 3 daughters in a house fire. But the evidence of arson was later proved to be junk science. Meanwhile, while Willingham was being executed, fire experts were confirming he likely hadn't committed any crime.
Case falls into that category where there is not one iota of evidence that the fire was arson. Not one iota.
It's like solving a murder case, except the investigators have zero understanding of fire science and unlimited confidence in outdated techniques. The tragedy here is incredible. A man executed for a crime that probably never happened, while real evidence was ignored. When your justice system is more concerned with closing cases than finding truth, innocent people die. Number 7, the wrong man freed after 30 years. Here's where wrongful convictions meet incredible resilience. Anthony Ray Hinton spent 30 years on death row in Alabama for murders he didn't commit. Ballistics evidence eventually proved his innocence, and he was freed in 2015. But this wasn't just a legal mistake. Hinton maintained his innocence for 3 decades while the state prepared to execute him multiple times. His memoir, The Sun Does Shine, became a bestseller after his release. Alabama officials basically said, "Our justice system just stole 30 years from an innocent man." The man looked at 3 decades of wrongful imprisonment and still found hope.
It can't get no lower for me. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it. That's what's the love of my life.
When you're powerful enough to maintain innocence against overwhelming false evidence, you've got strength most people can't imagine. Number 6. The woman who escaped in a laundry van. Moving on to something that made American authorities question their fugitive tracking abilities. Assata Shakur, convicted of killing a state trooper, escaped from prison in 1979 when her allies smuggled in weapons, held guards hostage, and she fled in a laundry van. But this wasn't just a successful escape. Shakur made it to Cuba, where she still lives in exile decades later.
I escaped, A, because I was afraid for my life, and B, because I knew that I would never receive justice.
She became a symbol of resistance while the FBI put her on their most wanted terrorist list. Picture international diplomacy. "Ma'am, you're harboring our escaped prisoner. She's our revolutionary hero now." Cuban officials basically said, "Your criminal is our freedom fighter." The woman looked at life imprisonment and decided exile was preferable to American justice. Number 5, the escape that still mystifies the FBI. Here's where prison security meets unsolved mysteries. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers escaped from escape-proof Alcatraz in 1962 by digging through cell walls with spoons, building dummy heads with real hair, and vanishing into San Francisco Bay on a raft made of raincoats. This wasn't just an escape. It was a disappearance that launched the largest FBI manhunt in history. Despite decades of investigation, they were never found. In 2015, a letter surfaced claiming they had survived, but the FBI couldn't verify its authenticity. Federal agents basically said, "Our most secure prison just lost 3 inmates to arts and crafts." The men looked at America's most infamous prison and decided raincoats were sufficient maritime equipment. When you're confident enough to challenge the Pacific Ocean with prison supplies, you've reached legendary status. Number 4. The cannibal who escaped justice through technicalities. Welcome to International Law Gone Wrong. Issei Sagawa murdered and cannibalized a Dutch student in Paris in 1981, was declared insane in France, then transferred to Japan where he was released on a legal technicality. Meanwhile, while victims' families sought justice, Sagawa lived freely in Tokyo, writing books and giving interviews about his crime. This wasn't just legal confusion. This was a man who committed one of the most horrific crimes imaginable and walked free because of bureaucratic incompetence. The irony here is incredible. Someone who should never see freedom again becoming a minor celebrity. Number 3, the man who escaped death row through forgiveness. Here's where capital punishment meets unprecedented mercy. Billy Moore spent 17 years on Georgia's death row for murder, but became the first U.S. death row inmate ever freed because his victim's family forgave him and pushed for clemency. But this wasn't just legal mercy. Moore was released in 1991 and became a pastor, dedicating his life to helping others. The victim's family looked at the man who killed their loved one and chose forgiveness over revenge. Georgia officials basically said, "Our death row inmate just got pardoned by the people he wronged most." This represents the ultimate combination of redemption and grace.
When the current hits, is it going to immediately kill me? Or am I going to linger on?
It's not just unusual, it's actively miraculous, and that's what makes it one of the most unbelievable prison stories ever. Number 2, the great train robber who escaped with a mattress. Moving on to something that made British authorities question their prison security for decades. Ronnie Biggs, part of the legendary Great Train Robbery, escaped prison in 1965 using a rope ladder and a waiting truck equipped with a mattress for his landing. But wait, it gets more audacious. Biggs fled to Brazil where he lived for decades.
Biggs was sentenced for the 1963 robbery of a mail train, but escaped from prison and spent 30 years on the run before returning voluntarily from Brazil in 2001.
Regularly taunting British authorities and becoming a folk hero, he only returned to the UK voluntarily in his old age. Brazilian officials basically said, "Your escaped prisoner is our celebrity guest now." The man looked at British justice and decided South American beaches were more appealing than prison cells. When you're confident enough to mock your home country's law enforcement from international exile, you've mastered the art of criminal publicity. Number 1, the prisoner who became president. And here we have the most absolutely unbelievable prison story of all time. Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for 27 years under brutal apartheid rule in South Africa, became a global symbol of resistance, was released in 1990, and just 4 years later became president of South Africa. This wasn't just a legal victory or political comeback. This was a complete transformation from prisoner to world leader.
We are going forward. The march towards freedom and justice is irreversible.
Mandela looked at nearly 3 decades of imprisonment and turned it into a platform for leading an entire nation. South African officials basically said, "Our former prisoner is now our president." But here's the kicker. Mandela didn't just win an election, he helped dismantle the entire system that had imprisoned him while preaching reconciliation instead of revenge. So, not only did he go from prisoner to president, he did it with grace and forgiveness that transformed a country.
The remaining years of my life in your hands.
This represents the ultimate combination of resilience, leadership, and moral authority. It's not just inspiring, it's actively impossible to believe. And that's what makes it the most unbelievable prison story ever told. And there you have it, the 15 most absolutely unbelievable prison stories that actually happened. And will make you question how reality can be stranger than any Hollywood script. From inmates mailing themselves to freedom to prisoners becoming presidents, these stories prove that sometimes the most incredible tales are the ones that actually occurred. Which one of these prison stories made you grateful for boring, predictable law enforcement? Let me know in the comments below, and if you know any unbelievable prison stories from your country that we missed, drop those in the comments too. We might just make a part 2 featuring stories that are somehow even more impossible than these. If this video made you amazed by human ingenuity and resilience, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to Fact Shock for more mind-blowing content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. Thanks for watching, and remember, next time you're complaining about your local jail's security, at least the inmates aren't building subway tunnels or learning aviation for romantic escapes. Sometimes boring prison management is exactly what you want. We'll see you in the next one, and hopefully, it'll feature stories with slightly less impossible plot twists.